Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom with Bob Olson, who will now introduce today's show and speaker.
WCAT Radio presents The Messenger with messages of things happening in the Catholic Church. And now, here he is, the messenger, Tony Sokolowski.
Sokolowski? It's Szalkiewicz.
Sorry about that, Tony.
That's funny, Bob.
I know.
So I have Bob O'Keefe bugging me, too, and I just had the element, so I'm on the air, you know. So,
but you are the messenger. You are the messenger.
There you go. There you go. Did you get the message for what's St. John of the Cross? Before we get into our invited guest, I have a saying from St. John of the Cross I'd like to share. And it's quote, "The reason why the soul not only travels sincerely within obscurity, but also makes greater progress is this. In general, the soul makes greater progress in the spiritual life when it least thinks so, yes, when it rather imagines that it is losing everything. There's another reason also why the soul has traveled safely in the obscurity. It has suffered. For the way of suffering is safer and also more profitable than that of rejoicing and of action. In suffering, God gives strength, but in action and in joy, the soul does but show its own weakness and imperfections. And in suffering, the soul practices virtue and becomes pure, wiser, and more cautious." St. John of the Cross. Interesting. So tonight, we have Pat Winook, and her husband was on the air 2 weeks ago. That was Richard Winook. And to give you a little background of Pat, she's married in 55 years this coming August. She has 4 daughters and 4 son-in-laws, 9 grandchildren. 1 is married. She and her husband have 3 children. She attended Central Connecticut State University, Holy Apostles, and St. Joseph's College, where she studied education, theology, and pastoral ministry. She served in the Archdiocese of Hartford for more than 30 years as both volunteer and professional staff member, CYO director, which is now called, of course, the youth ministry. She was a director of religious education, pastoral, social, and spiritual director. Her husband, Rich, and her were involved in the early days of the Charismatic Renewal as team couple for Marriage Encounter and in ministry in New Britain Memorial Hospital, now known as the Hospital for Special Care. With that, welcome, Pat.
Thank you, Tony. I'm glad to be here.
So it says in here, that's a long time with the Hartford Diocese. I didn't realize you were that long. Now you're in the Norwich Diocese.
Yes, but I lived and worked in the Hartford Diocese, and only came to Middletown in 2000. March of 2000 we moved here, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how is the Hartford Diocese?
Well, I don't know. Hartford Diocese, they're all great. What can I say? But being the Archdiocese means that, know, that they were all under the umbrella of, mainly my ministry was under Archbishop Whalen, who was a fantastic teacher and priest. And I was fortunate enough to have had a class with him. And through the different ministries, I did get to know him personally. So I could say that in the Archdiocese of Hartford, I knew a lot of people. And so I guess that the difference between the two dioceses is one that I was more familiar with the clerical people and the clerical, not in the sense of secretary and filing, but in the clerics in the sense of preaching and ministry.
Right.
But yes, but I did have a connection to the Norwich Diocese because Bishop Hines was my father's cousin.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, my great-grandmother was a Hines, Ann Hines. So I did have a connection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
So yes, I started out as a volunteer in the diocese, and I didn't have a lot of faith. We talked a couple weeks ago about faith. I was a practicing Catholic, but not a devout Catholic. And I was going to church one day with my husband in the car, driving our 4 kids, and we were about halfway to church, and I said, there has to be more to this than just going to church. And I got into church, and now you see all those little old women who kneel down, they say the rosary before Mass, they're there early, and I'm thinking, watching at them, and I'm thinking, hey, it's so important to them that they come and they're early. So I said, hey, God, I want to know, if you're there, I want to know it. I want to really know it. You got me? Good.
There you go.
And then I became a devout Catholic. So.
What is that? So that's what made you to take the next step, so to speak. We call it I call it climbing the ladder. You know, then you fall off.
It was. Right after that, the director of religious ed at the time came and asked me to teach. And in those days, we had a Sadlier made the catechist manual separate from the student text, and the catechist manual was really geared to teaching the catechist theology. And I devoured that book. I loved it, and I learned a lot. So
for the listeners, what was the name of the book?
It was the Sadlier's. The catechist was just regular catechetical material for students, but when you have a text, the teacher gets a manual that explains how to teach the text, but it also teaches the catechist at an adult level. So you had a twofold learning, one to teach the student and one to learn yourself. So that was really a great blessing for me, and helped me start to think about my faith. And, I had gone to a parochial school up to 8th grade, but, that's just how it is. It's like it just didn't mean all that much to me, But it was like, you're practicing, but you're not, and you're living it, but it has not gone from your head to your heart.
That's the Holy Spirit. That's who gets you there.
Yes.
You got to pray for that. That's once you got involved, because you got involved with the charismatic renewal.
Well, that was later.
Right.
You know how I got involved with the charismatic renewal?
Yeah.
It was a very big deal then in those days at St. Maurice Church in New Britain. It used to be a large group. And a young man, John Hart, he was the librarian for the Greater Hartford Community College. And my husband was the director of admissions at the time. And they needed an extra podium, and he was the graduation marshal, and they needed an extra podium. So Jane Hart said, well, you can use the one from St. Maurice. Come over. And he brought it in to the school. And then he said, Rich had to return it, so he brought it home, and Jean Hart said, oh, Rich, return it at 7 o'clock on Friday night to the church hall. And that's when the charismatic meeting was.
Really?
The hall was filled. It was a big deal, So we walked in, and we had our children with us, but we all prayed together, and we became involved. So it was because of how we later became a delayed vocation over to St. Holy Apostles.
What years was that?
I don't know. A long time ago.
In the 80s, right?
I had to be. I don't know. He was a long time
ago. Pam and I got involved in 81, very much so. 79, 81, but we had prayer groups before that, but it was all tied in, where the outpouring of the Holy Spirit was, I think, happening all over the place.
Yes, it was, because there was hundreds of people who would go. I mean, it wasn't really a big deal. And we loved going.
Bob wasn't even in the state. Were you, Bob? Is he on?
Yeah.
No, he might be having something to eat, because he's running I don't know how many programs every day.
What did you ask me?
I said, when did you get involved? You with the charismatic group?
1981.
Yeah, that's when I did too. Yeah, 81. I think was when it hit the high peak.
Yes, when we went that night, I think that was really about the peak when we joined.
Yeah. The outpouring of the Holy Spirit is what I was.
Oh, it was on fire.
Yeah, it really was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the same token, we were going up to see Father Ralph DiOrio up in Worcester, Massachusetts, who's a healer. And his mass
did too, Tony. But Rich and I did too.
Yeah, if you recall, his services were anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. But it kind of flew by because of the miracles that we were witnessing for the healings and all kinds of things that were happening. People getting slain in the spirit, and which they don't pass out. How do you explain that?
It's a grace. It's an outpouring of grace where you could just, like when they talk about saints in a swoon, or they just, being filled. It's like to be so filled with the Spirit that you can't hold it. You just can't hold it.
The Holy Spirit overtakes you.
Yes, you just can't.
Yeah, but for the lay person, it's like passing out. You crash on the floor.
It's not passing out, though.
No,
it's not passing out.
You don't crash. It's just a simple, total letting go.
That's right.
Total letting go.
No, but
surrender.
I'm saying if a lay person first saw that, they would think, what happened to that person? I've seen them where they panicked. Oh, no. But we knew better because we've experienced that,
Yeah.
So we had some prayer going out at one of our meetings, and there was a fellow there that had never seen it before. So I think when one person rested in the Spirit, and he ran out and got some water, he thought the person had passed out.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
No, but it's not being passed out. In fact, you know pretty much what's going on, and I would always tell the people, don't get up till Jesus tells you to get up. Enjoy yourself down there.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things, enjoy yourself, because it is enjoyable.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it really is resting. So then, I see that, so then you were involved with the marriage encounter too. How did that come about? Yes, we
were a team couple for a long time. In fact, all of our friends joined, and one at a time we all became involved. And all of our friends who went to a marriage encounter are all still together. So I think it had something to do with keeping us all together. I don't know for sure that that's what kept us together. Maybe we'd all stay together anyway. But all long-time married people.
But I find myself with spiritual people today. I don't subscribe to my way of life in the past. Now I'm not even close to that. And like my siblings would say, what is this? Because they were inquiring about the third order, the Carmelite order. Mm-hmm. They say, well, what is that? And I gave a definition. I said, look, there's two types of families. There's the secular family, which is I'm in the secular family with you guys, and then there's the spiritual family, which is when you're with a bunch of people on a certain path to get to heaven. And I says, it's hard to define, but it's a different type of calling, you know? And you're just given a bunch of people around you that are all on the same path, it seems. I say to the guys, I says, you know, I look at life today as being inside the ark, and a lot of people outside the ark. And I say that because if you don't think you're inside the ark, take a look at what's happening in the bars, in the movies, the plays, all the trash that's going on. So I think that we've been blessed by being inside the ark these days, you know, especially with the world going crazy.
In the sense of being protected.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. So, like, everything's upside down right now. I mean, and I refer to this many a time. If you read Pope Leo XIII's prophecy, where he speaks about how Satan takes over this century to test God's people, then you can fully understand, at least come to some understanding of what's happening in the world today. At the same token, we have a lot of apparitions from the Blessed Mother. She's appearing all over the place, you know? So, which brings me to Fatima. I mean, we had a big weekend. And we had the youngest children, youngest saints now in the Catholic Church. How old were they, Pat? Do you know?
I think they were 7, 9, and 7, 9, and 12, something like that, or 11, 7.
Yeah.
They were young. I should know that. I used to know that. I used to know a lot of things. They're 10, 7, and 9. Lucia was 10, Jacinta 7, and Francisco 9. I have a note here.
Okay.
Yes, when that happened to them. And it was you mentioned earlier that the angels came to prepare them earlier, and Lucia, and so when you had mentioned that, I just looked it up, and it was 2 years before. And so imagine that.
1915 was the first apparition with the angel, and Lucia with 3 of her girlfriends saw the angel. Then the second appearance happened in 1916, but that was Lucia with her 2 cousins, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, M-A-R-T-O, who just this past Saturday became saints. And they are the youngest ones. They're just kids, 7 and something, like you said.
Yeah.
So that happened on the anniversary of Fatima. So the Pope was over there celebrating that and announcing that. That was pretty good. So
it's like
now, you know why they became saints?
Well, I think they dedicating their life, surrendering to their life to God.
Nope.
Not being a model bed. Tell us.
Nope. No. In order to be considered a saint, you have to have a religious virtue first. Second of all, you have to have miracles performed that people pray to you, and miracles happen. In this particular case, there was a Brazilian boy who survived brain injury and was healed at Fatima. It was basically, the parents say, it is amazing. It is like an answer to prayer, because I felt that always they would be canonized, said Angie Welch from Killington, Ireland. She said she prayed to Francisco Marto for 20 years, hoping for her 4 daughters would meet nice boys like Francisco. Isn't that funny? The 4 of them have met boys that are just beautiful. I couldn't ask for better. So he had answered all my prayers, she said. Isn't that interesting?
That is, I never heard that.
That's Francisco. And so they Francisco and Jacinta, aged 9 and 7, and their 10-year-old cousin Lucia reported on March 13th, 1917, the Virgin appeared to them. And they had a half dozen appearances which of course guided us through what was going to happen if certain things weren't done that the Fatima had requested to be done. So, and well, it's pretty interesting that whole thing. This whole story of Fatima. But go ahead.
People had to turn back to God.
Yeah.
If we didn't turn back to God.
No, it says Our Lady foretold and warned us about a way of life that is godless and indeed profanes God in his creatures. Francis said in his homily, this is Pope Francis, such a life frequently propels and imposes risks leading to hell. And that's where we are today. We're on the brink of a third world war, and I don't think people understand that. You know? It's just that because of the way the world is today. Now, it's been reported, and I've read in the past, where the chastisement, which is a punishment from God, has been remediated twice through prayer and penance. But Our Lady of Medjugorje said the third one can't be remediated. It is going to occur. But there's going to be a lot of other signs given from heaven that even the scientists, and some of the signs are going to remain for the end of time, and they're going to be able to be photographs, take videotapes, and anything else, but you can't move them or get near them. So I don't know what that is, to be honest with you. So I don't know.
Where are you reading from, Tony?
Well, what I just said was what I know of. Part of the stuff that I read was from May 13th, 1970 at 11:58 a.m. And it's talking about Pope Francis when he went down to I guess it'd be right in Portugal. So, but the other stuff, as far as the remediation, that was stuff I read years ago.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, I remember reading a long time ago. I could have refreshed myself if I thought about this topic. So when the angel on the second visit gave communion to the children. And then
that's true.
And then there was a story about how in some book was one of those a Can publisher books on Eucharistic miracles, and it was the priest went to get the chalice from the church, and it wasn't there, and that was at the time that the children were receiving from the angel.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was in one of those books from the Can. I remember reading that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Wow.
Imagine that, receiving the Eucharist from an angel. How profound, you know. But I was as I was telling you earlier, Tony, I was in 7th grade when the Our Lady of Fatima film came out, Warner Brothers movie, and our whole school, St. Francis School in New Haven, is where I went, and the sisters marched us over to the Pequot Theater on Grand Avenue in New Haven, and we watched it, and it was like so profound for me. I believed. I walked out of there believing and knowing that was true. Somehow it just in your heart, and you know it's true. You don't doubt it at all.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, your soul does. You know what I find interesting in life, and I've had witness to this in the past. You know, certain miracles. I believe everybody has a miracle. Something happens in their life that's so profound that they have an option to either accept it or reject it. And what I mean by accept it, to say that, yeah, this is really from God, and never forget it. To reject it, to say, oh, this can't be true. To doubt their own vision or whatever happened to them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I had shared in the past. Did you ever hear of Neil Harrington?
No.
In Massachusetts. Well, he was in Connecticut. He was a mailman who was having visions of the Blessed Mother, and he was up in close to the Massachusetts border, but in Connecticut. But in order to get to his house, he had to go through Massachusetts, and then come around and then loop into his development where he was living. So I was bringing a gentleman by the name of Ray LaPointe. I don't know if you knew Ray LaPointe.
Nope.
He came with us. He's an elderly guy. And then we brought a newly with us, Jennifer. And I think you know Jennifer. I can't think of her last name, but she's at St. Pius, active with the church.
I think I know who you mean, yes.
You know, Jennifer and Regis, right?
Right.
So we're going up there, and we're talking about, Neil and all that, and I had missed the exit. So I swung around and went up, where you get off of the Big E, and turned around and started heading south to pick up that next exit. And as we hit the exit, the whole car filled up with the aroma of roses, the smell of roses. Now, Jennifer could not smell it. She said, I don't smell anything. But Ray, Karen, and myself says, I can't believe it. So on the way to Neil's house, which was probably about at that point 5 miles away, about halfway, Ray started doubting the smell. He said, well, I don't know, it could be this, it could be that, blah, blah, blah. So as he kept talking and doubting it, he lost the aroma. And Jennifer started to smell it because she started to believe that, Karen and I still had it impregnated within us, So by the time we got to Neil's house, Ray couldn't smell anything. And Jennifer was overwhelmed with it because once you get to Neil's house, the aroma was just so dominating. And I thought that was pretty interesting when it comes to when Christ gives you a healing or gives you something and you don't follow up on it. He'll take it away. I mean, that's scripturally solid. He says, when I give you gifts, the more gifts you get, the more he expects from you.
Yes, that's scary, isn't it? When you've been
it's scary because I've seen more than one person who had a lot of gifts that were given to them turn their backs on God, and they were basically punished for it. They lost, their house, or they lost their car. They had, bad things happen to them. So it's like, you gotta, if God gives you a gift, you better stay tuned, So I'm reading this. It says the martyrs are now the youngest ever saints who didn't die as martyrs. Isn't that interesting?
Say that again, Tony.
The martyrs, the two kids, are the youngest saints ever who didn't die as martyrs. Because before the Mass, Pope Francis prayed at the tomb of each of the Fatima visionaries. The martyrs' siblings died 2 years after the visions during Europe's Spanish flu pandemic. Lucia is on track for possible beatification, but her process couldn't start until after her 2005 death. She died in 2005. But the kids did die from the Spanish flu. And that was predicted, that was told to them when Our Lady was appearing to them, says that they would be taken shortly.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that? Yeah.
I do.
So, and I saw the tombs at the time when we went over to Portugal, at Fatima, at the church where they are now, where they rest, was just the two kids, but Lucia was still alive at the time. So now I understand they brought her there, and she's entombed in the same church. So it's interesting, Yeah.
My granddaughter, Bailey, Bailey, is going to go there next year on pilgrimage with the school.
So the kids who was
excited that even though I haven't gotten there, my granddaughter will have. I think it's so.
Yeah. It says the boy that was healed, right? It says the boy, age 5 at the time, had fallen about 21 feet from a window in 2013 and suffered such severe brain head trauma that his doctor said he would be severely mentally disabled or in a vegetative state if he even survived. The boy not only survived, but has no signs of any after effects. Now, that happened to my daughter. She was healed in a very similar way when she was a cheerleader at St. Pius X, and her two spotters had turned away to say something to somebody. My daughter at the time did a backflip, and her head hit the concrete floor in the hall of St. Pius. And she fractured her skull. And we got a call, wound up at the children's unit at Hartford Hospital. And they wanted to, she was in pretty bad shape. Her brain had swollen to a point where they wanted to drill holes in her brain to relieve the pressure. And Karen and I immediately discerned that we didn't want them to do that. And found out later that was a good judgment. But anyways, it got to a point after a few days, they said, there's nothing more we can do. Basically, why don't you just bring her home so she could be at peace? In other words, bring her home to die. So when we brought her home, she's in bed, and I said to Karen, I said, one thing we didn't do, I said, we never prayed over her. Because, of course, we're involved at the Charismatic Renewal at the time. So it was Karen, myself, I think a guy by the name of George Crozon, and it might have been one other person, I can't recall. We started praying over her, and after about, I'd say 10 or 15 minutes, she sat up in bed and says, oh, I'm hungry, I want to get out of bed. We said, no, stay here. She says, oh, I'm fine. I said, no, stay here, we'll bring you something. Don't get out of bed. Because we didn't know what was going on, to be honest with you. So the next day, we brought it to the eye doctor because we couldn't believe it. And when her brain swelled up, her pupils in her eyes reversed. Instead of being convex, instead of being popped out, they're reversed. So the doctor looked at her eyes and says, no, she still has the brain injury, and he gave her some candy and says, read this. And he pointed to a letter, and she says, like a C, and she said D. And then he says E, and she'll go F. And he says, no, she can't see. And Adele takes the candy, throws it at him, and says, no, you idiot, look at the bottom line. She had perfect 20/20 vision. They wrote her up in a medical journal. They couldn't believe it because other doctors came in that day immediately afterwards and looked in and says, how could she see? How could she see that? So, so those miracles do exist.
Oh, I believe.
She had another miracle. Huh?
I believe.
Yeah, you saw him up, were you up Father Ralph DiOrio?
Yes. Yeah.
That's how's your
well, Richard himself, he had a malignant melanoma, and it had gone into his lymph nodes, and they didn't think he was going to make it.
Wow.
So, who was a priest, he went immediately and said Mass for him, and here he is 20 years later.
Wow.
That's to have someone, to pray for him.
Right. Well, I don't know why people don't go to try to search out these healers. There are healers. I mean, we're part of a healing team, and I firsthand witnessed what God had done with the people we're praying over them, like their feet growing, a big welt on their arm, reduced to a pimple. I mean, you see it happen right in front of you. Jesus is alive and doing well. But in order to get healed, you got to go search them out. You got to knock and open the door. Let them in. So but I just find this whole thing with the young kids. Lucia will be a saint eventually. I'm sure of that. So.
I am too.
Now, what did you do at the New Britain Memorial Hospital?
Well, we used to go, and the New Britain Memorial Hospital, for those who don't know, is a hospital of special care for children and adults who have had some traumatic injury, and we mean really traumatic. This is now they have it's called it's a hospital of special care, but then it was New Britain Memorial Hospital. And these people needed long-term care. It wasn't convalescent home care kind of care. It was they needed daily physical therapy. They had like there was a woman in an iron lung. I can remember there being a young woman who had part of her brain removed, and literally had some of these that were very hard to even look at. And we used to go there, and we would visit, and I would teach a catechism, and Richard and I, one of the patients, a young girl, became our godchild. But Rich would drive. They had a handicapped van, and there were people there who would like to go to Mass at St. Jerome's Church in New Britain, which is handicapped accessible. And so on Saturday nights, he would go over to the hospital and take the hospital's van and put the wheelchair patients in. And we'd get to the church, and people would help, and they would wheel them in. And they would, put the wheelchairs in front of the pews. There was enough room there, and so that they could attend Mass. And it was a big event for them to just be able to go out like that, So, our children came with us, and we would. The father, one of the priests from St. Jerome's would come and have Mass on Wednesday nights for those who could not, because there's some people, for instance, they would live on a gurney. I remember that young man, Jimmy, and he actually was always on a gurney, and we would, they would come down to the PT room, and they would have Mass there. So our job would be to bring the patients from the rooms down. And then I can remember one time that some of the patients wanted some McDonald's. It was going to be such a treat, and we thought, why not? We would treat them to McDonald's. Well, so we went out we took them out onto the patio, took the wheelchairs, bring them out onto the patio, and sit down with our bags and all set to start eating, and realize, okay, they can't eat without help. So we had to, put our meal down. But that was an experience in itself. But we did a lot of things like that. One of the women became a third order, and she did go into a facility up in another state eventually. But she was even able to do that. These people have lived with a lot of hope, with a lot of guts. They have lots of courage. Things like disease I'd never heard of, like one woman had King Frederick's disease. And there was a volunteer who used to come from St. Joseph's College and read to her. It was a kind of a complete deterioration, slow deterioration of your whole body. Just some things that things that were like out of the ordinary. A lot of courageous people. And then Richard was Eucharistic minister there for 25 years, and would bring communion every other Sunday. And
so you basically witnessed the same thing as St. John of the Cross mentioned, and that is in our quotum, there is another reason also why the soul has traveled safely in obscurity. It has suffered. For the way of suffering is safer and more profitable than that of rejoicing in action. Rejoicing in action probably indicates, you're healthy and you don't need God as much, whereas when you're suffering in soul, you rely more on God to bring comfort,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's basically what you were sharing with us too. Not that one would like to do that. I remember going to a charismatic meeting once, and they brought this person, this guy, and he was flat on his back on a Guernsey, a bed, a roll bed, and he had mirrors because he couldn't look up, he couldn't raise his head. He was just totally paralyzed, and he was looking at mirrors to the front of the room. He had his head facing the front of the room, but he had mirrors so he could see that way. I guess he couldn't see the other way. And he said during the thing they were asking a bunch of questions, he says, my observation here is that I feel that I'm more healthier than what I'm hearing out in the audience. Because people were, saying this, that, and the other, complaining about this, that, and the other one. And he just took his state of life as, suffering for the souls in purgatory, or for those who don't know God yet, Mm-hmm. I just thought that was pretty profound for him to make that kind of statement.
Yes. There was a young man, Todd Kilroy, who was had a great handicap. But as much as as difficult as it was for him, he would not go to church without a tie.
Really?
Somebody always had to tie his tie. And it was so important to him. But these were people who really, they did suffer, but they didn't complain about their suffering. It wasn't they didn't even really talk about them. They were very, very anxious to hear about other people.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is amazing. It is amazing.
Because basically when you talk to people, especially when you get older, everybody wants to talk at once because they're afraid if they don't talk, they're going to forget what they're going to say. Isn't that true?
That is true. Hey, I do that.
Yeah, and I observed that. I'd want to say something, but I've come to subscribe to St. Francis, saying, and it's quote, it's to be consoled. It's better to how does it go? The one to be consoled and not to.
Make me an instrument of your peace.
Yeah.
In pardoning, that is pardon. Yes. To console us, so not to be consoled, but to console.
Yeah, exactly. Not to be consoled, but to console. And that takes time. You got to think about that when conversations occur. And I've subscribed a lot of times recently to total quiet. And a longing for being in church. And a lot of times you can't get there, but it's just that desire. It's that you have this certain desire that you want, and the things that with me, I'll give you an example. We just recently cleaned out my closet because I had we moved into this house 3 years ago, and I had 2 boxes in my closet that were closed because I had put those 2 boxes in the storage bin, the first boxes in, and they were the last ones coming out. So, and time went by, and I wound up during the summer. They were all my summer clothes, buying a whole new wardrobe. So the other day, I opened the boxes, and they were all brand new shirts that I'm a Nautica type person, good clothes and stuff. And I'm saying, my God, what am I going to do with all these clothes now? Because my closet was full, because I had bought a whole new wardrobe. So Karen sat with me, and we started going through the stuff and saying, you don't need this, you don't need that, we use this for work, use this for play, use this for going out, that type of thing. We wound up, long story short, with 100 hangers.
That's a lot of
my closet still is full. So today I went through and I started getting rid of socks. The same thing happened. It's like, so then I find myself thinking, what is this desire? The desire really is to be back, to go home, to go to heaven. That's the desire. We say, we want this, we want that. No matter what you buy, it never seems to be enough,
Mm-hmm.
But my desire now is really to be in heaven. Yeah, I mean, I had my out of body when I was 18 years old. I don't know if you knew that.
You had a what?
I had an out of body when I was 18
out of body
years
experience?
old.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfectly healthy, nothing wrong with me, but it occurred. And I remember being in this void, and I couldn't define the vastness. It was like an empty room, but St. Faustina described it, I think, pretty accurately. It was like being in the middle of a cloud. And yet, I knew, I didn't see the light, I didn't see the tunnel, but I knew I was in God's presence. And I yelled out, and I didn't know what the time frame, how long I was in this state or anything, because there's no such thing as time. But I remember saying, but Lord, I haven't finished your work yet. And I don't even know why he said that at 18, because I didn't really understand that at 18 years old, I wasn't there like you had mentioned earlier, with church.
Yes.
Sunday worship where you just go, but you don't get into the depth of it till the Holy Spirit comes into you. So, and then, of course, here I am, the messenger, doing his work. See, we don't know, right?
Right.
We don't know.
Sometimes I think God has a good sense of humor.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he reveals it to me constantly. And I'm blessed with a bunch of good friends like yourself, your husband, Rich. And hey, where's Rich these days, by the way?
Oh, he's out in the kitchen.
Oh, he is? Yeah. Tell him I said hi.
I will. I wanted to say something about that out-of-body experience. One thing, I was taking this course, it was a spiritual theology course. It was, it was a pastoral ministry course. And we had to we was, writing about spiritual experiences in this course. And I realized when I was taking that course that I go around and I talk to people about the spiritual life. People come talk to me about the spiritual life. Yeah. But in my whole life, I never talked to my parents. Mm-hmm. And so I said to my father one day, now, you have to think about here you are, an adult, and all these years later, I'm just going to ask him now, Dad, did you ever have a spiritual experience? And it's like, well, yes, he says. And so tell me about it. But we don't talk about our spiritual experiences.
No, we don't. We should.
And don't ask about them. And here I was in my, 40s, and I am now just learning. Now, my father did have a spiritual experience when he was a young boy, and he had tipped over in a rowboat on the Quinnipiac River. And he doesn't remember anything except that waking up on the beach. And he thinks his guardian angel picked him up and put him on the beach.
No kidding. Wow.
So when you're talking about having that experience as a young person, it's amazing that we have not talked about those kind of things. We just don't think to do it.
Well, it's called, I have a definition for, it's called political correctness.
Correct.
Now, my definition is for political correctness is 2 words. It's called Sharia law. Because if you can shut people up, you can do whatever you want to do to people. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's what it is. And in the past 8 years, that's what they tried to do to us. Is to force, especially now we see it overseas, the onslaught and the martyrs of the Catholic faith or Christian people. It's no different than what happened in the Second World War with Hitler. Mm-hmm. It's identical. The annihilation. We're always under attack, but we have to fight back. Fight back and then do it. That's why we have a president that's really bringing that all back. No matter what people think about him, he's bringing it all back. And people are starting to speak more about, saying Merry Christmas, and talking more about faith. in protecting our civil rights, our constitutional rights, let alone for freedom of expression.
Yes, I agree with that.
Tony?
Yeah.
Tony?
Yeah.
Last week, I wanted to add something. Last week, I was reading about the second miracle at Fatima. I don't know if you ever heard about it. But you know when the sun was dancing?
Yeah.
There were hundreds of people, thousands. I don't know how many, but they were there.
No, there was
and they all
70,000.
They all threw their. How many? 70,000.
70,000 estimated on the property, and another 70,000 that's witnessed the dance of the sun outside of Fatima.
Okay, well, the people that were there watching the sun dancing, they all threw their rosaries on the ground to have them blessed, and they all threw them in a pile, and it was muddy, and after the sun, after the sun miracle ended, they all went to go get their rosaries back, and they were all tangled up. And they wanted to get their own rosaries back, but they couldn't do it. Well, there were a couple of young people there. And on the father's shoulders, because there were so many people and they couldn't see, so they were holding these young people on their shoulders. So they let them down, and they went over to the pile of rosaries, and they picked them up, and they started handing them back to the people. And every person got their own rosary back.
Yeah,
Did you ever hear that story?
No, but Bob, I've heard of similar things like that, and it's a miracle. It's really, it's, yeah.
Well, the fellow that wrote it said that he said there was a confirmation in a Portuguese paper, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, that he found that had the report in there about but it was not spread very well. I mean, not too many people knew about that miracle.
No, I didn't know about it.
I was just trying to find it. I was trying to find it on my computer, what I was reading, but now I can't find it. So.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
We know why that is. The evil one is always out there trying to, get it all messed up. It's a constant battle. It's carrying.
But I wanted to mention that anyway. This has been very interesting.
I'd like to read more about that. That's interesting. Now
I'm going to keep trying to find it.
Yeah.
But
the Dance of the Sun, I witnessed and videotaped in Medjugorje, Yugoslavia, where Our Lady's still appearing. It's a daily event. And I videotaped it. So I know what that is. I've been a witness to it.
Wow.
It's beautiful. Not the way it happened at Fatima, because the sun came crashing to Earth. They thought it was going to hit Earth. And then it recessed quickly. That's when everything dried up. It was a monsoon. It was like pouring, cats and dogs. And that's how and then once it was pulled back to its orbit and its position, then everybody was dry. Everything was dry. Everybody who was ill there were cured of all illnesses and, handicaps, all that. It was miraculous. So that's a big miracle. Did you hear about that one, Pat? With the rosary?
Well, I know that when the sun danced at Fatima, they were dry, and not only dry, but clean.
Right.
Could you imagine that? I mean...
Well, I witnessed a Dance of the Sun in Yugoslavia. I have it on videotape. There's been a lot. I've seen a lot. I'm going to find some time. We're alone with you and Richard. I'm going to tell you some of this stuff and show you some of this stuff. I didn't get a chance, this past week. I just wasn't able to do it. But this week maybe I'll come over and show you.
Okay, Rich just walked into the room, so you can say hi to him yourself.
Yeah, there you go. Hi, Rich.
How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing fine. How you doing?
How did my wife's recording work out?
Yeah, there you go.
Want to know how my recording worked out?
Yeah.
In the process, Rich. We're still on.
We're still on.
It's been a beautiful program. You shared a lot, Pat.
So, well,
Yeah.
faith is so
You've had
important.
quite a journey.
I have. I'm very blessed.
So we have about 4 minutes, which really about 3 minutes. Pat, you came to the Norwich Diocese. Tell us a little bit real quick about what you did at the Norwich Diocese, because your journey's still not over.
Well, I really didn't do too much. I retired in, I moved to Middletown, and I was, at the time, when I moved here, I retired about 2 years after, so I did get involved somewhat with the religious education program with Mary Ann Fagan.
Yeah.
Yes, I did some junior high retreats for her, and I did some catechist workshops. And what else did I do? There's some special programs. We did some intergenerational programs.
You also did with my wife, the Living Rosary. You went
yes,
to
the Living
that.
Rosary, right. You know that one because Karen was involved in that too.
Oh,
and so I had started this group called Sojourners, and it was like a group spiritual direction. And the Living Rosary came out of that because one of the people was said that she had this apparition, actually, not apparition, dream.
Yeah.
And the Blessed Mother was saying to her, "Where are the children? You know, we were praying the Rosary, but where are the children?" And we talked about that in our group, and we talked to Father Walter at the time, and through Father Walter we started having the Living Rosary, and then we started then to include the children because of that dream this other person had. Because we don't know how God's going to speak to us, but we discerned that that was a call for us.
You know, you should clarify, because a dream, God speaks to us through dreams.
It certainly does.
You know, and there's other ways that He communicates with us through other people. It's a question of discernment, and we should be. Everybody, even the listeners, should be aware of this. If you want to find God, go to people who are holy, who are trying to. They're on the path of holiness, and there's a lot of. They're all over the place. You know, or even ask a priest. They'll give you somebody who's like that, who's on the path of holiness. And then you could find, then God will speak to you. You'll be able to discern what's from God and also what's from Satan. Because he plays an intricate role trying to get you all messed up. Thinking you're not worthy, you're a big sinner, how can you be forgiven? And those are all lies, by the way. God can forgive even murder, you know, and he has in the past. So
yes, I one of my husband's favorite programs used to be the what was that one with about a mafia program? I can't. It was a famous about the Godfather, and the Godfather too. But within that there was this powerful little piece where he goes to the cardinal and he says, "I have killed my mother's son." It's like he slowly starts to confess, and the priest, the cardinal says to him, "Forgiven." They're walking. You know, sometimes we think that we have to go to confession in a confessional, but this was just, they were walking and talking, and and he was trying to say how unworthy he was, but the cardinal was telling him, "No, you know, God is wants you to be saved. He's trying to tell him that. And he just, thinks that he can't be, he's not worthy. And so as he says one thing after the other, he says, forgiven.
Yeah.
And it's
we have about 30 seconds now, so are you on, Bob?
Oh, yeah. So you can wind it up, Tony.
Yeah, so, Pat, I want to thank you for coming on board. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward. Maybe another time we'll get you back on here.
That would be nice, Tony.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Enjoyable. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
Very good. So we'll be back with the messenger. We'll be back with the messenger, and again in 1 week, same place, same station on WCAT Radio. And in the meantime, may God bless each and every one of you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. God bless.
God be
Thanks,
with you.
Pat. Thanks, Tony. Bye-bye.
Right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.